We have tons of NHL news and rumors to take a look at here today, including some trade talk around teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the New York Rangers, and the Dallas Stars. Plus, we have some signings today involving Toronto and the New York Islanders. We have several contract extension updates involving players like Connor McDavid, Kirill Kaprizov, Kyle Connor, Jack Eichel, Adrian Kempe, as well as Jason Robertson in Dallas. Plus, we have comments from Team USA GM Bill Guerin on the Lane Hutson snub from orientation camp. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a ton of NHL news and some rumors to take a look at here today. We've had one of our busier news days in a while. Now that we're into the month of September, Labor Day has passed. We're within a couple of weeks of training camps being opened. The news is going to hopefully start to pick up, and we have a lot more different things to talk about. First up, we actually have news today from the NHL waiver wire. Nothing too serious, but the Anaheim Ducks have placed a prospect on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. So they've mutually agreed with Rodwin Diancho that they will be terminating that contract and he can seek opportunities elsewhere. So that'll become an official contract termination as of tomorrow. Of course, we got big news that we talked about in a prior video earlier tonight, broken by Frank Saravalli, that the NHL and the NHLPA has agreed to make some of the changes that were negotiated in the new collective bargaining agreement be effective for the 25-26 NHL season. Now, I'm not going to go into full detail and analysis on this topic because I do have a video out talking about it earlier, a little bit more length, but essentially a lot of the items that were in the CBA for changes are going to be effective for 25-26. Not all of them, though. Some will be rolling out the following year. But for example, we are going to have changes to long-term injury reserve this year. So players, if they're going to be out for a length of time, they can still be going on LTIR. Teams can still get cap relief. But instead of getting the full contract availability, they're going to get the amount of a league average salary, which is, I think, over $3 million right now. So they'll only get a portion of it based on, and that'll stay that way. So whatever the league average salary is year to year is what they'll get for cap relief. Now, if they're going to be out for the entire season and there's no chance of them playing in the playoffs, then they can request for full relief, which it can be given on exception. Of course, that'll impact things when it comes to the playoffs because we will have a playoff salary cap now. So basically, before every game day in the playoffs, teams will have to submit their rosters to Central Registry. They will basically take all their annual salaries and add them up on that particular game, whoever's playing, and that cannot exceed the upper limit of the salary cap. So if they do make additional additions to their roster because of being able to go into LTIR at the end of the season or at the trade deadline, they acquire other players, that's all fine and dandy. But if those players that are on LTIR come back in the playoffs, then they'll have to make some sacrifices. They won't be able to all play during the playoffs because they won't be cap compliant. So obviously that'll be a big one as well. The dress code's effective right away, so there's no more dress code for NHL players. Teams can't enforce that any longer. We also know that there's no more double retention on players. So you can't have a third-party broker come in and basically take up some cap space and get a reward for that. So oftentimes we'd see 3-team deals just to get an extra retention spot. So that or a player's contract can still have double retention on it, but there's a 75-day rule. So it can only be done every 75 calendar days. So because of that, I suspect we might see more trades earlier in the season to try to give them the opportunity to be able to move that player again and do the same thing. Also wonder if we're going to probably see more hockey trades than we will, future-based trades, because obviously cap will have to be moved back and forth. But yeah, lots of changes coming into effect here. Paper transactions are no longer allowed. So if a player is sent to the minors, they do have to report, and they will have to play one game before they can be recalled. So that's another one as well. And no deferred money on new contracts signed as well. But as far as the 84-game season, contract length, and all those items that we're changing, those are all be effective for next year. And I know there's also some rules affecting having some exceptions for 19-year-olds to play in the American Hockey League. That is something that they still have to have ironed out with the Canadian Hockey League for junior eligible players. So because of that, that's not effective here just yet. Now, a bunch of other news today, including a couple of signings today. The Toronto Maple Leafs have signed goaltender Dennis Hildeby to a 3-year extension. So right now on the depth chart in Toronto, Hildeby would be acknowledged as the number 3 goaltender. I think he's a guy who can come up to the NHL if need be, and certainly if there's an injury to Stolarz or Hall or Wall, then he can fill in. He's proven that he's an okay replacement in that sense. Now his 3-year deal is a one-way deal in the last year, but the first 2 years are actually two-way, so he can continue to develop in the minors. Mostly the first year, it's a $775 at the NHL level, $350K at the AHL. The second year, also two-way, $850 at the NHL, $450 at the American Hockey League level, and then year 3 is a one-way deal, $900K. The average salary for cap purposes will be $841. So obviously a pretty good contract. Makes you wonder about the 3 years out. Will he be on the NHL roster at that point? A lot of that will be partly of what he does in his development, but clearly they have some negotiating to do with guys like Wall and Stolarz and see where the future goes with their tandem. Now, speaking of their tandem, Anthony Stolarz had signed a 2-year contract coming to Toronto, had a pretty good first season, so he's now eligible for a contract extension like a lot of other players around the league and has yet to sign one. So Dave Pagnotta of thefourthperiod.com is also reporting today that they have started talks with Stolarz about a potential extension. They haven't really talked much all summer, but they have had some preliminary talks here recently. So clearly there's interest to extend Stolarz. I'm not sure, obviously, what kind of term or anything is preferential to the team, but based on his first year, they're certainly looking to keep him around. And I guess we'll find out here, like I said, on a longer-term basis between Stolarz and Joseph Wall and Hildeby, how things all kind of play out here. Now, signing in a couple tidbits around the New York Islanders. They've signed one of their prospects who they picked up in the 2025 NHL draft. That was second-round pick, Daniil Prokhorov. He gets his 3-year ELC. He was taken 42nd overall this year, so he gets his NHL rookie contract. And the Islanders today also have added Ian LaPerriere as a pro scout. Of course, Ian LaPerriere was most recently head coach in the Lehigh Valley for the Flyers, and then he was let go there but retained by the Flyers to work in other capacities, but has now moved on to the New York Islanders to work as a pro scout. But I assume at some point he's probably going to want to get back into coaching. At least I would think so, but we'll have to wait and see. A few other quick updates too around the NHL. A couple items. Grigory Denisenko, who was at one point a pretty highly touted prospect, has unfortunately never worked out. He was a Florida Panthers draft pick, and between his draft year and his D+1 year, he was considered one of the best prospects outside the NHL. Like, he was really looked upon as a very promising player, but things have not worked out. And after 5 years in North America, between a little bit of NHL time, mostly American Hockey League time, between his time with the Panthers and the Golden Knights, he is now headed back to play in the KHL. The Calgary Flames today announced that assistant coach Brad Larson had to leave the team and resign due to family reasons. We don't know the exact extent of that, of course, but Larson is out with Calgary on his own choosing because of family reasons, and they've hired longtime NHL coach Dave Lowry. Most recently, of course, he was head coach in Winnipeg briefly, but certainly been around the NHL in a lot of different capacities over the years. So Lowry will become the new assistant coach there in Calgary. And another update on the Flames as well. There is some updates from Dave Pagnotta indicating that the Flames and RFA forward Connor Zary have made some progress on his contract, and he needs to be able to play this year. I know the rumors was that the team was looking for a bridge. He was looking for a longer term. The latest updates indicate that things are trending towards it being a 3-year deal. I wouldn't call it imminent, but certainly progress has been made, and it sounds like it's possible that it could be resolved here pretty soon. Now, actually, back to the Leafs for a second. Not only did they sign Hildeby and obviously started talking to Stolarz, but Pagnotta is also reporting that the Leafs are still actively trying to trade a few depth players in the forward group, especially like David Kampf and Calle Järnkrok. They've been on the chopping block all summer, but obviously the last 4 or 5 weeks, things have been pretty quiet around the NHL for player movement and activity, trades, etc. So That's still very much on the list of priorities for Brad Tree living in the Maple Leafs. I suspect they'd probably like to do that ahead of training camp because they want to cut some salary to make another move, and they're unable to do that right now. So we'll see where things go with the Maple Leafs on that front. I know another update as well. A couple things involving the Minnesota Wild. A couple things involving Minnesota GM Bill Guerin. One, Kirill Kaprizov, of course, we know one of the top exciting players in the game, needs a contract extension as well. And there have been ongoing negotiations between the Wild and Kaprizov, although they've yet to come to an agreement on a new deal. There is belief, according to some reporters like Pagnotta, that the Wild are prepared, I should say, to offer a massive deal somewhere around the 8-year mark and around $120, $130 million. That's going to put his AAV at least 15, if not pushing $16 million per season, which would make him, at least temporarily, probably the highest paid player in the NHL. So we know that Kaprizov, I believe, is due back in Minnesota this week. They were hoping to have some face-to-face negotiations to try to solidify things and get this ironed out before camp starts. But right now, that's the latest on him. And, of course, Bill Guerin, the GM of the Minnesota Wild, is also the general manager of Team USA for the upcoming Olympics, and of course was the GM for the Four Nation franchise, our team as well, for that tournament. And Guerin was interviewed because there is NHL general manager meetings going on right now, so there's a lot of reporters covering those, and had a chance to speak to a variety of guys there. Eric Engels of Montreal, covers Montreal for Sportsnet, spoke with Guerin on the Lane Hutson snubbing, if you will, in his omission from the Team USA Olympic orientation camp. Of course, since the orientation camp roster was released, I know especially where they invited as many as 16 defensemen, a lot of people were quite surprised with Lane Hutson not being one of those guys. I don't think anybody would have questioned the fact that if he didn't end up being on the team. Clearly he's had a great rookie season last year with Montreal, acknowledged his top rookie last year. And there's lots to like about his game. Clearly, offensively, very good. Now, of course, from a different perspective, I know when you're picking a team, depending on where you can slot players, if you can play top pair minutes, and you can play power play one, and you can be the top offensive D-man, okay, that's obviously what Hutson, the role that he claimed this year with Montreal. But, in other aspects, you can say, okay, maybe they want somebody a little bigger, a little stronger, a little more defensive-minded, whatever. You got to have a variety of different types of players. But no matter how you shake it, it would have been, I think, good for him to get the experience, just to be involved with this group and to know that he's under the microscope here for contention. And just because he wasn't at the camp, it's not 100% given he won't make the team. There could be injuries, there could be other things that change throughout the year. Maybe he absolutely goes off and just makes it too hard for them to not put him on the team. You just don't know, right? But Guerin's comment on Hutson was basically that this is the deepest group of USA players in all positions, including goalie, defenseman, and forwards, that they feel like they've ever had. Lane's a great player who will have every opportunity to prove himself in the future. So kind of didn't really answer the question per se. Acknowledges that he's a good player, but essentially saying that they're a really deep team, and just a lot of other good players. That's it. And he's not wrong. That's probably a fair comment to some extent, but obviously you can understand Guerin probably not wanting to say too much. Like, he's not going to come out and say, well, we didn't want to. He's not going to play ahead of Hughes or Werenski or some of these offensive guys, so we wanted a bigger, stronger defenseman or something. Like, he's not going to say things like that. But I know Habs fans have been really torn up about Lane's omission there, and that's the first we've heard from the Team USA GM, or first opportunity really anybody's had to really ask him any questions on it. So we'll see how things go moving forward. Some other guys that need contracts as well, some updates from Pagnotta here today. Kyle Connor and the Winnipeg Jets have started their talks. The belief is definitely going to be his first number of his contract is going to start with at least a 1. It's going to be double-digit millions for sure. Obviously, Winnipeg would love to keep him. Lots of banter about Detroit if he does make it to being available later. But obviously, Connor is a huge part of Winnipeg's success. Adrian Kempe and the Los Angeles Kings are also talking about an extension. The belief is right now that the team is probably at max of about $9 million, where Kempe is looking for at least 8 times 10. So there's a fairly big gap number-wise between the team and the player there on that one, but they'll continue to grind away and see if they can find a deal. Jack Eichel, of course, is working on an extension with the Vegas Golden Knights. The belief is there that it's probably going to come in at least $13 million. Of course, he had a career season last year, number one center, one of the top centers in the game, Stanley Cup champion. Of course, adds Mitch Marner, who is likely on his wing this year. Going to be a big year, I think, for Vegas and Eichel, but obviously, one big factor for him might be whether or not he should wait and have McDavid go first. There's belief around McDavid. I mean, a lot of people lately have been saying he's not going to sign until after the season starts. And even then, it's not a given. Some uncertainty. Bob Stauffer, who is one of the most connected reporters around Edmonton, is pretty confident on his show today. He said he's very confident that McDavid will sign and seems pretty confident it'll happen before the season starts. Some people think that's going to end up being a shorter deal, 4 or 5 years, around $17 million. So obviously, the more McDavid signs for, the more guys like Eichel can ask for. So it could be a case where maybe he waits, but they're definitely working on things as well. Now, another player that's working on things, and it's hard to say how things play out, but could have a different outcome, would be Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars. Now, Jeff Merrick was talking about the Robertson situation on his show here today as well, saying he feels that it's the Dallas Stars' first choice is to sign Robertson. They don't really want to move him, but if it comes down to not being able to get a contract done, they're going to do what's best for the team, and they probably will look to move him if things are, looking poorly on that front. He said they're not going to get Marner, is what he said. So essentially, they're not going to just let him walk him to free agency and see him go bye-bye in the summertime. So basically he says that they did explore the trade market on Robertson earlier this summer to kind of get a feel for what it might bring if they do decide to go down the trade market. So I think they already have a pretty good idea of what they might be able to get. Merrick believes that for Dallas, their ceiling for forward contracts, or maybe even everybody for that matter, is the Mikko Rantanen deal, and that they're not going to want to go above Rantanen. So it's going to be less than that. So you're probably looking at, I would think, for what they would, this is just a guess, but probably that 10 to 11 million range would be the most. I'm not saying they'll even go to that for sure, but that would probably be the highest that they go. If Robertson's looking for north of 12, he may not get it in Dallas. But ultimately, like I said, we could still see a trade with this player, but it's only going to be if the contract extension doesn't work out. And ultimately, based on what Merrick's comments were, it sounds like they'll negotiate up until the season and maybe in the early part of the season, but I don't think they're going to want to wait super long. If they need to pivot and make a move, they're going to probably want to do it before the season gets too deep. So it wouldn't necessarily be a trade deadline thing. It'd be much sooner than that. So we'll see, obviously, where things go. Another name to watch this year as well could be Evgeny Malkin. There's been some chatter here in recent days about Malkin maybe going to the New York Rangers should they be in a playoff spot ahead of the NHL trade deadline. We also heard earlier in the offseason that the Penguins could be a team that might sell off a lot of assets early, even before the season or early in the season. Now, we know that they've got a bunch of players available. Nothing has really materialized here as of yet. The prices are still fairly high, but at the end of the day, we know that there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be gunning for that first overall pick, trying to get Gavin McKenna, and teams that start slow and think they're going to be a lottery team are probably going to want to bottom out early, if you will. I mean, it's one of those drafts that you're going to see teams racing to the bottom, I think. So, to be fair, I think you're going to see guys like Erik Karlsson, Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell, and maybe even Malkin as well, be moved before the season gets too deep. The belief is that Malkin would be interested in going to the Rangers. Obviously, his friendship with Panarin and a chance to get back into the playoffs and have one last kick at it before he retires. The belief was the Penguins are not going to offer Malkin an extension beyond the current season. So this is going to be the final hurrah for him as a Penguin this year. I mean, maybe he'll decide that he wants to retire a Penguin and finish up the year in Pittsburgh. We know Crosby will likely do that. Letang has more term, so he's probably sticking around. But ultimately, Malkin will be the main one that we could see movement with, I think, amongst those core three on the Penguins at least. But like I said, on top of Malkin, you're going to see Rust, Raquel, and Karlsson's name continuously come up until a deal goes down for those guys. But could Malkin end up with the Rangers? That would be an interesting scenario unfold later into the year. So we'll see. Obviously, I think that would be, if that trade did happen, that would be something that I would think would be maybe at the deadline, or maybe even like between Christmas and the deadline. Somewhere around there would be my guess. But let me know your thoughts on all today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.